when Kirby Smart and Georgia took the stage at SEC Media Days in Atlanta on Tuesday, Kirby Smart made a very revealing comment that I don't think any of us saw coming, honestly. And that is, he kind of made it clear that there's an open competition for the starting job at Georgia. So for those who don't remember, Ryan Puglisi was a 4-star freshman who just committed to Georgia this past year in the 2025 recruiting class, I believe. Not in the 2025 recruiting class. Excuse me. Somebody correct me on that. I believe it was the 2024 recruiting class. Yes, a 4-star who committed in the 2024 recruiting class out of Texas. Kirby Smart went with Gunner Stockton last year after Carson Beck got hurt. Carson Beck got hurt in the SEC championship game, and then Kirby Smart went with Gunner Stockton to win that game, and then they lost their playoff game to Notre Dame in an upset with Gunner Stockton. Carson Beck, as we know, transferred to Miami, and we all thought they were going to go with Gunner Stockton. Now, I wasn't a fan of Gunner Stockton. I think there were a lot of big concerns about Gunner Stockton, particularly in that Notre Dame game. Playing with Georgia last year, he did complete technically 70% of his passes for 440 yards, but only 1 touchdown, 1 interception. And against Notre Dame, very pedestrian. I mean, we're talking a 47.5 total QBR, despite a 134.2 quarterback rating, only 7 yards per attempt, completed 20 of 32 passes for 234 yards and a touchdown. Against Texas, by the way, 12 of 16, for 71 yards, 75% completion rate, but only 4.4 yards per an attempt. And 1 interception. Yards per attempt matters to me a lot more than completion percentage or total yards. And honestly, that was a bad look for Gunner Stockton, despite his technical efficiency in that game. However, I still thought they were going to go with Gunner Stockton. But Kirby Smart made a comment that suggests something else, and it's What the H, brought to you by Rick Terry Jewelry Design. Kirby Smart was asked about Gunner Stockton and did praise him in his leadership. He said, quote, "He's prepared every game as if he was the starter. People can say that and say that's coach speak, but he actually did it. He went in, watched extra tape, and he knew that at any point in time he could be called up to go into the game and play." Smart defended his issues last year because he said, quote, "He didn't play in a normal environment where you've got a big lead. Maybe you're beating an opponent. He went in against the top defense in the country and one of the biggest games of the season and performed well for a guy that had not gotten a lot of reps with the starters. So I thought he handled that moment well. And he taught a lot of our young players that you've got to be prepared and ready." That was in reference to the SEC title game in Atlanta. And Smart brought Stockton, by the way, and then said this was a message about leadership. He separated himself as a great leader of the team, and you try to bring people here that can affect others. He's done that in spring practice. However, after that, and this is the What the H, Kirby Smart says, quote, "The starting job isn't necessarily a layup for Stockton." I'm sorry, the starting job is not necessarily a layup for Stockton. Kirby Smart says, quote, "Ryan Puglisi is doing an awesome job." No, he says Ryan is doing awesome too. Ryan and Stockton are going to be competing for everything they do. Gunner knows he's got to go out and play well. Stockton, for his part, added about the differences that come with starting. He said, quote, "It's just a different role. I get more attention in Athens, getting pictures and stuff like that, but that comes with the role and just being more vocal with the team and just enjoying it. I've enjoyed the process so far, and I can't wait for this season. I'm really excited." Why hasn't Kirby Smart fully named Gunner Stockton the starter? You brought him with you to SEC Media Days. You chose him to finish the season last year. You touted him as the leader. Stockton is talking about what life is like as a starter. Why did Kirby Smart not name Gunner Stockton the starter? That is What the H. It is brought to you by Rick Terry Jewelry Designs.
Having been in the jewelry industry for a long time in the Knoxville community, I saw a need for a jeweler, a real jeweler.
Our ability to do these designs has really been based on the customers bringing new things in and challenging us as a store. Our goal is not to tell anybody what they want. Our goal is to listen to what they want and then help them get there.
Schedule your consultation today to get your special someone the perfect custom gift just in time for the holidays.
All right, you guys go ahead and vote on the poll question. I said, why didn't Kirby Smart definitively say Gunner Stockton is the starter, is Georgia's starter at QB? And you can say he doesn't believe in him at heart or coach speak. Yeah, that's right. I said coach speak. And it looks like a lot of you guys are saying you believe it's somewhat coach speak. Highly possible. But I think it's also highly possible that he doesn't believe in Gunner Stockton at heart. Gunner Stockton, again, did not play that well in those 2 games last year. At the same time, they could have a situation like Tennessee, where, like Tennessee, the team is closer without Carson Beck, who is out there, flashing his money in his Lambos and things like that. Losing Carson Beck could bring Georgia closer together the way losing Nico Iamaleava brought Tennessee closer together. The problem at the same time, though, was Georgia lost Carson Beck in the season, and it didn't bode well for them in the SEC title game or the college football playoff. Okay, I know they won the SEC title game. They didn't look great doing it after Gunner Stockton came in, and I know he was 12 of 16, but I do think he was way too much of a game manager in that situation. So with that in mind, could Georgia have a quarterback controversy at the start of the year? Now, going through Georgia's schedule real quick, they don't have an easy start to the season. If they don't figure out their quarterback situation, and also to your credit, Blind Squirrel Sports, you talk about it, and you're right. You said your biggest concern is Georgia's offensive line more than Gunner. Well, what if their offensive line is an issue? And what if Gunner's not ready to play? I mean, they play at Tennessee, 3rd game of the year. Now, all things being equal, I still think Georgia's way above Tennessee talent-wise, even to this day. But I said this is Tennessee's best chance to beat Georgia because it's at Tennessee, and it's early in the year where Georgia's got a lot of youth and a lot of things they got to work out. So this is the first year Tennessee's played Georgia where Georgia's in a situation where they can make enough mistakes to lose the game, if that's fair to say. And that's where Tennessee, Georgia is so interesting. And if that happens, they got to bye, yes, but then they come back out and they got to play Alabama. And I know that game's at home, and I know they're coming off a bye, but I told you guys, I think Alabama's going to be really, really good this year. I think we are really underrating how good Alabama's going to be. And it's not like Alabama's not coming off a bye. They're coming off a bye for that game too. So Georgia could very well be 2-2 coming out of September, which would be a disaster. They still have Texas down the pike on their schedule. Lucky for them, Texas is at home. They have Ole Miss. Lucky for them, Ole Miss is at home, but Ole Miss did beat them last year. So it's not like the schedule gets easier. And if they're 2-2 coming out of September, now teams of Georgia stature, they're not going to quit on the season anymore at 2-2 because the college football playoff is still in play, even with a 2-2 start. So if they do that and they went out and beat Ole Miss, win at Auburn, beat Florida, at Mississippi State and Texas, and then make sure they beat Georgia Tech, who could be a lot better this year after Brent Key seems to somewhat be building up that program, then yes, you could say that maybe Georgia Tech is going, you could say that maybe Georgia is going to be fine. But a 2-2 start is on the table, guys. And the poll question is out. Why didn't Kirby Smart definitively say Gunner Stockton is Georgia starter? Well, you guys don't agree with me, do you? Only 15% of you say he doesn't believe in him at heart, but 85% of you are saying coach speak. And so that's kind of interesting, the whole way that plays. Blind Squirrel Sports, I know you're a Georgia fan, so I want to get to you. You say special teams and poor offensive line play had a lot to do with the Notre Dame loss. And then you said, then we're in more trouble than I can fathom. Yeah, look, Blind Squirrel Sports, that's the thing. Georgia's loaded with talent overall. And you're right, poor offensive line play was a big deal in that Notre Dame loss. But Gunner Stockton was efficient, but not great in those 2 games. His completion percentage is very overrated because of how many easy throws he was making. Again, 4.5 yards per an attempt, even against Texas, is just a big concern if you're Georgia. I think Kirby Smart made a mistake not fully all out naming Gunner Stockton the starter. I think he clearly is. So why didn't he? You got to think that's a bit of a concern. So we'll see how that plays out.